been considering what I want to do for my next project, and I think it's time for me to build a new scale model project, which is why we're out here in the Hobby Night workshop. And as I was looking through all of my scale model kits, I found my perfect next project: the Type 1 Self-Propelled Gun and Kurogane 4x4. So let's head inside and I'll tell you why I picked this kit. The Type 1 Self-Propelled Gun, also known as the Ho-Ni-1, was designed to provide mobile, direct fire support for Imperial Japanese Army infantry during World War II, and the Type 1 was a formidable machine for its time. The Type 1 was developed in response to the need for a more powerful and mobile artillery piece that could keep pace with the advancing infantry units. To accomplish this quickly, it was built upon the chassis of the reliable Type 97 Chi-Ha medium tank, a Japanese chassis with a proven record. The most distinctive feature of the Type 1 was its open-topped, heavily sloped casemate, mounting a powerful 75mm field gun. This cannon was capable of both engaging enemy armor and providing devastating anti-infantry fire. The armored shield offered good protection for the crew against small arms fire and shell fragments, though it left them vulnerable to overhead attacks from mortar and other allied artillery. Building dioramas has been a subject I can't stop thinking about. I really enjoyed my first one, the war-torn scene I built where one man tries desperately to save his wounded friend with the help of an apothecary servitor. But now, I want to do something larger. Oh, and I even want to do something with lights and moving parts, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm teaching myself small electronics on the side, but for now, I just want to go bigger, which is why this kit caught my eye. Unlike all the other builds I've done in the past, this set comes with 2 vehicles, as well as multiple figures. And the box illustration even provides some inspiration for the future composition. But before I start thinking about the landscaping, I need to actually build these vehicles and figures. Having reviewed the instructions to familiarize myself with any peculiarities of the build, I decided to set the car aside for now and begin on the mobile artillery first. The reason that I started with the artillery is because I'm more familiar with building armor. I mean, it is my favorite thing to build after all. Just look at the number of tanks and guns I've built on the channel since I got involved with the scale model hobby. The Type 1 self-propelled gun started like all my other treaded vehicle builds, with the wheels, a section that I admit I spent way too much time on. However, my end result was some very smooth wheels. Why was I being so picky about mold lines when normally I only focus on the particularly egregious ones? Because I plan to use this for a diorama, one that I would love to take to a competition. So I'm being extra mindful of the mold lines and my cleanup because I don't know who the judges might be or how picky about mold lines they could be. Better safe than sorry, I say. As a result, I spent an absurd amount of time scraping and sanding the mold lines on all of the round surfaces. They looked great when I was done, but my wrists and hands were regretting my actions immensely afterwards. I should have taken more breaks. I'll remember to do that next time. At the very least, I did take a break when I was finished sanding the wheels, but not for very long because I was feeling motivated. And looking ahead in my instructions, it looked like we had pretty smooth sailing from here, and nothing needed nearly as much cleanup as the wheels did going forward. The chassis was next, and I got to work immediately on attaching the suspension. One of the things that I love about scale models and what drew me into wanting to build and paint them is that during that process, I get to learn about the things that I'm assembling. Am I building a 100% accurate version of the Type 1 suspension? No, but I still think it's rad that based on what I'm building, if I were to go and look at a tank in a museum, I think I could identify the suspension on a real one. And what I think is even radder is how as I attach all the wheels that I painstakingly smoothed earlier, they go on without a hitch and all move properly. The wheels all moving means that later, after I've painted the self-propelled gun and attached its rubber treads, I can use that motion to leave legit tracks in the mud on the diorama, both creating a more realistic ground, but also dirtying up the treads. I was so happy. Everything was going so smoothly, ideas for the eventual diorama were buzzing in my head, and then I got to the gun. Assembly of the gun started off fine, just like the rest of the build. That is, until I got to the end where the soldiers would load the gun. It consisted of several smaller pieces, all stacked against each other in a very particular way, and I almost messed it up. Thankfully, my error is one I caught before my glue had fully set, and I was able to shift the pieces into the correct position before slipping the barrel into its support and getting it into position on the front of the vehicle. Which I have to say is pretty sweet, since the gun can pivot and move from its loading position to its ready to fire position. With that disaster avoided, the last thing to take care of on the self-propelled gun was to assemble the exhaust and attach a few equipment pieces to the chassis. This kit came with 2 artillery crew members who handle loading the weapon, which I will admit are some of the easier minis I've ever assembled. Both minis were a breeze to put together, but their cleanup was tedious and even more annoying than the wheels, albeit less painful. I really like Tamiya's sculpts. The details are lovely, but the mold lines are heinous. I will likely go back over them to make sure they are clean before I prime them, just to make sure I really got everything, because they are so obvious otherwise when paint starts being applied. Hey guys, I'm just jumping into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because I know most of you aren't. If you're into the spicier side of the content, then you should join my VIP page. New members get 50% off their first month subscription, and I really hope to see you there. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. Building the 2 crew means we've officially completed one half of this kit, and now we can move on to the second half, which includes the Kurogane and the officer driving it. The Kurogane's history began in the lead up to World War II, as the Imperial Japanese Army sought a light, reliable, and affordable 4-wheel drive vehicle for reconnaissance and light transport duties. Developed by the Nissan Motor Company, the Kurogane was inspired by Western design, particularly American light utility vehicles, and production began in the mid-1930s, with the vehicle entering service around 1936. The defining feature of the Kurogane was its permanent 4-wheel drive system, which offered a significant advantage for navigating the muddy tracks, dense jungle, and uneven terrain common in the Pacific Theater. Now, most Kurogane models featured an open-top design, allowing for excellent visibility for reconnaissance missions and providing easy access for the crew. However, this also meant less protection from the elements and enemy fire, and that's the kind of design we're building today. I have only built one other Tamiya car kit, so this will be a mostly unfamiliar process. In fact, immediately out of the gate, it was different from what I was used to. I'm not starting with wheels, no, instead this build began with a suspension, a part that consisted of only 3 pieces, and I still managed to nearly assemble it wrong. My failure annoyed me to no end, as the instructions called out to be mindful of its positioning, and I thought I had been. I even had to have CC come over and take a look at what I was doing, because I could not get this piece to attach to the car's chassis correctly. Thankfully, between our 2 brains, we figured it out. I swapped the pieces around to fit correctly before hurriedly moving on to the next step. The rest of the inner workings on the car went amazingly in comparison to its start. As I connected the exhaust, rear suspension, and built out more of the car, I continued to think about how neat it was that I could identify some of the parts without even looking at the instructions. I've been watching so much car YouTube lately that some of the essential parts I am able to identify with just my eyeballs, and that makes me really giddy. Do you ever feel the same way when you learn something new and then get to apply it to your real-life experiences? Thankfully, unlike the self-propelled gun, the Kurogane has 4 wheels, and it didn't take me nearly as long to smooth them. Finally, attaching them to the vehicle was equally a breeze. With the wheels attached and out of mind, there isn't much more I need to do except attach a few fiddly details. For example, the doors had the tiniest of handles that I need to attach. Now, I know why these kinds of details are left as separate bits instead of just being molded directly onto the door, but man, does it frustrate me. Speaking of frustrating pieces with a bunch of tiny bits, the frame of the windshield, which as I wrap up the build will remain unattached to the model, at least until I paint it. I don't want to glue in the clear acrylic panels until after I've painted it so that they remain clear, and I know that will be easier if I leave the windshield unattached. The last fiddly bit to attach was the steering wheel, something I am sure I will knock off accidentally at some point while I paint it. It's just that fragile feeling to me. Both vehicles are complete, which means the only thing left to take care of is the officer. Sadly, he's a standing figure, so I can't have him driving the car when it comes to the composition of the diorama, but the box art has him tastefully standing next to the Kurogane, so I will likely mimic that to keep things simple. So with the glue drying on the officer, we can take a look at the assembled collection and talk about what's next. And with that, I have everything built that I need for my next diorama scene. At least when it comes to the actual vehicle and the figures. I still need to figure out what I'm gonna mount it all to, get the terrain materials, maybe find some little accessories to build out the scene some more, add some trees, bushes, but I'm very, very pleased with what we got done in today's video, and I hope you guys are encouraged to go out and maybe pick up your own scale model kit yourself. I just think they're so fun to build. I genuinely have a blast with them, and I hope to continue to build a lot more going into the future, and I hope you're excited to see the diorama that I build out of this kit. I am genuinely hyped for this. As I said in the video, dioramas have been a thing that have been on my mind basically since the first one that I built. I can't get it out of my head, so I must build more, and I have 2 floating around, this one and one other one, but you'll have to find out about that one later, once this one's been complete. Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed and learned something about scale models. For those of you that are my patrons or YouTube members, I want to give a special thank you to you guys, because without your support, I wouldn't be able to make content like this. You guys are amazing. I really, really appreciate all the support. And if you guys want to become a member or a patron, now both groups get access to the personal private Hobby Night Discord. So if you've ever wanted to share your projects with me or just chat with me a little bit more privately, that's the way to do it. Anyways, I've been Angela. I hope you all have a wonderful hobby night, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everybody.